there's more in the news today than just Ebola and Islam. Neil McCabe is on the line with us. He is the conservative commentator and editor of Guns and Patriots newsletter, gunsandpatriots.com. And he tweets at Neil W. McCabe, M-C-C-A-B-E. Hey, Neil.
Great to be with you, Tom. Good morning.
Well, welcome back to the program. And thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's afternoon here in D.C. So there is a new law that would say that if you are convicted of a violent crime, you can't get a gun. Do I have that right?
Well, I mean, it's always been the law that if you're a felon, you can't have a gun. In fact,
in every state?
Well, the ATF is. I'm not sure. I know there's a federal law about it, and I know that the ATF is rounding up people left and right who are caught with a gun.
Okay, I didn't realize there was a federal law to that effect.
Yeah. In fact, there's an office in the Justice Department that's in charge of pardoning people who need to carry, who want to carry. They can petition for relief, and that office hasn't been funded in years.
Right. And so now California is taking this a step further. If somebody says, this member of my family is violent, their assertion is enough to get their gun taken away. Is that, do I correctly understand that?
Yes.
Okay. And you are saying, how dare you take my gun away? This is one of the things that just baffles me, Neil. I have been saying for some time now that if the people who are working for voting rights in the United States would simply take the same position as the NRA. Can you imagine if the NRA was in charge of, if in North Carolina, where Pat McCrory is passing this incredible voter suppression bill, it's going to knock 600,000 people off the ballot, or up in Wisconsin where they're knocking 300,000 people off the ballot or off the voter rolls. If it had been that in North Carolina or in Wisconsin, Republican Pat McCrory or Republican Scott Walker had said, we're going to knock 200,000, 300,000, 600,000 people off the list of people who can potentially own a gun, all hell would be breaking loose.
Well, of course, Tom, because gun rights are protected by the Constitution.
Shouldn't your right to vote be at least as sacrosanct?
Well, not if you're dead or you live in another state, and I think it's responsible.
Nobody who's dead or who lives in another state is voting, or if they live in another state and they voted, they lose their right to run as a Republican for Secretary of State, you might have noticed.
Obviously, the dead are not voting themselves, but certainly people are carrying on the legacy of their voting heritage, and that's a problem.
No, it's not a problem, Neil. It's not happening.
You can say it's not happening, but I just don't want it to happen. Yeah. And so I don't want
and
it to happen. And
therefore, let's throw 5 million people off the voting rolls all across the United States, but we've got to make sure they can have their guns, right?
Tom, I don't want to throw anyone off the rolls who is eligible to vote, and I don't think anyone does. But there is some concern.
Yes, you do, Neil.
Well, no, stop. And you know that in the state of Florida, there are people who are registered to vote in both New York and Florida, California, and Pennsylvania and Florida, Massachusetts and Florida, and they play it both ways. These people exist, and you just want to clean things up a little bit.
31 cases of in-person voting fraud out of 1 billion votes cast over the last 14 years. This is not a problem. People can already go to prison for 2 years for showing up and saying, yes, I am this person, and I have not voted so far in this election. 2 years is the minimum in most states.
We both agree that people who shouldn't be voting, and we just argue about how important it is we're going to enforce it.
So let's agree then, if you want to take that precautionary principle about voting, and I understand that, you don't want somebody who is not a citizen to vote. You don't want somebody who's dead to vote. You don't want somebody who's already voted once in one state to vote in another state. I understand all that. Let's be that cautious about guns.
Well, the problem, Tom, is that we already know that someone who's dead doesn't have the right to vote. If someone is alive and a functioning citizen of America, you just can't take away their gun rights with a phone call. This is a constitutionally protected right.
You can't take away you shouldn't be able to take away their voting rights either. I mean, look at Jeb Bush knocked 60,000 African Americans off the voting rolls in Florida in 2000 to set up the theft of the election by his brother.
Nobody is in favor of getting rid of eligible voters. I don't know where you come up with that.
Google Catherine Harris and Jeb Bush 2000.
Oh, stop.
It's true. Come on, there's an ongoing lawsuit on this thing right now.
Oh my God! And you might as well be talking about the Alamo or whether FDR knew about FDR.
I just don't, I don't get this fervent frenzy for don't take away my gun, but I don't care if I don't vote.
And then there was Allende in Chile. Oh my God, I'm crying on the phone. Can we talk about guns, please?
Yes, we are talking about guns, and I'm saying, why don't we? There's just guns are designed to kill people, right? You agree with that? I mean, guns are very good at killing people. When cars in the 1920s got good enough to kill people, started killing people, we came up with a very simple system to deal with it. Nobody said you don't have the right to a car or the privilege of however you want to define it.
Tom,
what we said is you get a driver's license, you get insurance, and you register your car. Why don't we do that with guns?
If you feel your life is in danger and you want to carry around a Buick, that's your right. But, there's seriously... this thing is...
If you feel that your life is in danger, Neil, and you're carrying a gun, you're far more likely to kill yourself or somebody you love than to protect yourself from somebody who's going to harm you.
Well, what you're really talking about
statistically
is the problem with freedom.
I'm talking about the problem with guns.
The problem of living in a free society, and it's messy, and it's chaotic, and things go wrong, and humans make mistakes because humans are not perfect, and we are all sinners, and yet we prefer to live in freedom.
And therefore, and you're defining freedom.
Crime.
No, wait a minute. What about my freedom to walk down the street and not think that some whack job's got a gun he's going to pull on me?
Well, we can't control what you think, Tom. I've tried for years, and it's never worked.
You're right, Neil. But okay, I concede the point. No, but seriously, what about the right of you're all concerned about people's rights relative to guns.
Yes.
What about my right not to feel intimidated when I walk into 7-Eleven or into Starbucks because some fool is in there because trying to make up for the fact that his penis is half the size of everybody else's and he's got an AK-47 strapped on his back?
Easily. This is a family show, Tom. But you're not allowed to brandish a weapon. You're not allowed to threaten somebody. You're not allowed to assault them. You're not allowed to threaten people. I mean, these things are already against
Define
the law.
threat, Neil. If I see somebody who is carrying a gun, I feel threatened.
Well, I mean, that
wouldn't you?
Obviously, a jury would have to decide that, Tom. But it would have.
Well,
to
here's.
I mean,
this actually a state decided that. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, Neil, but back in the '60s, California was an open carry state. Ronald Reagan was the governor. Everybody carried guns openly. The John Birch Society used to organize rallies where people would show up with their guns. And Huey Newton and the Black Panthers said, the police are showing up and they're killing black people and they're kicking the crap out of black people, and we're going to show up when they show up. And they bought police scanners and they had a whole car full of guns. And they started showing up every time police stopped a black person and getting out of the car legally with large guns. In fact, they walked into in Sacramento, they walked into the Capitol building with guns. As was their right. And as soon as the good people of California saw black people running around with guns, oh my God, that was the end of open carry in California.
Well, you see, both of us agree that these gun laws are rooted in racism, and we're both against them.
No. Okay. I think I just checkmate. All right. My point is that people felt threatened. Right. In this case, it was white people felt threatened by black people. But I think, frankly, everybody feels threatened by people with guns.
We should all just try to get along, Tom.
Yeah. There you go, Neil. All right. Neil McCabe, conservative commentator, editor of the Guns and Patriots newsletter, gunsandpatriots.com. Thank you, Neil, for dropping by.
Hey, great to be with you, man. Bye.
Always interesting. Always nice to talk.